Oh, this is, yeah, her partner got like first place in the Falcon competition. And this guy standing beside her has a Seattle Seahawks hat on. And the odd thing about this, out at this village, we just bumped into in these thousands of people, 6 different people from Seattle.
Wow. No way.
You know, that all had some sort of Seahawks gear on.
Oh,
Yeah. I mean, you know, and I happen to have a Sounders hat on, so I had the Space Needle and things like that. Well, this guy's name is Ishmael. He lives in Capitol Hill. He's a journalist, a graduate student from UW, who is working for a year for an English language newspaper in Muscat, Oman. And he's up covering the Nomad games for the newspaper that he's working for. And we kept bumping into him around town. He'd been there a couple days before we were, so he was a great source of information about good places to eat and how to get from point A to point B. And it was great fun. He was just having the time of his life.
Did you take your hats with you?
We gave a lot of hats away. Yeah. And these are the Uzbekistan folks in their costumes. Okay. And that is a Tatar golden eagle hunter, shaking hands with, I don't know who that other guy is. But anyway, everyone's just having a great time. Their common language with almost all of them is Russian, because it's all former Soviet states and things like that. Okay. And then there's a lot of souvenirs you can buy everywhere, including tons of dolls with their funny hats and things. Okay. And those are 3 Kazakh girls that were archers and were sort of dancing and posing and things like that. Okay. And then there's a museum there, which is interesting because it's a museum basically of the history of the last several hundred years of Kyrgyz political history. And the most famous woman chieftain, clan leader in Kyrgyz history was this woman who, when the Cossacks came down and tried to basically take over the Fergana Valley, and the Kyrgyz clans resisted, the Cossacks and the Tsar's troops would basically kidnap people or take them hostage, and then say, look, either, give in and give us your allegiance or we'll kill the kid, And so she is very famous because there are statues of her all over Kyrgyzstan, which her saying, translated in English, is her response to the Tsar when she said, if I have to choose between my son and my country, I choose my country. And so they killed her son. But she resisted right up until the end and then fled over into China, I think, in the last part of the 19th century. Anyway, so she's famous for that, as being one of the powerful women chieftains. Okay. Now, this is really great. This is in the museum again. And if you remember seeing pictures of the Soviet era of kids going to school, they have in their hair, they have 2 pigtails, and they always have these big clumps of white gauze called bushkuz. And I don't know what that really is supposed to mean, but anyway, what's interesting is that in Kyrgyzstan, the school uniforms, these bushkuz are still part of it. And so you'll see everybody has them, even though they might not like to wear them because they're old-fashioned or something like this. So this is the daughter of the lady in the museum. And she came in from school with a ball cap on, a pink ball cap. And so I sort of gave her a little bit of guff about, well, where are your bushkuz? And so after I went into the museum and came out, she showed me, she has her bushkuz. So, okay. And then,
You just carry them?
yeah, no, see, they put them right up here with bobby pins in your hair. And so then she put them in for me for that photo. And then I'm sure she went back to wearing her pink ball cap the next day. Okay. And then all around there, of course, are the memories of the Second World War, you know, and the fight against the Nazis, and every town has, just like us, have their monuments with all the names of the people from that region that died in the war. And so this is the one down in Issaquah as well. Okay? And a couple more of the costumes going into the main stadium. Okay? And then this is at the talent show thing. And this is, I think it's Tatar, not Bashkir, legend of how a group of Amazons, Bashkir women warriors, defeated some bad Mongols that were coming in to try to take over. And so this was a skit in which you had a whole bunch of the guys dressed up as Mongols, and then you had a whole bunch of these ladies with their swords and their leather tunics playing the Amazons. And it was too dark, I think, that really it didn't come out very well on the video, but this was them out there before they were doing their dress rehearsal. Okay. And then, of course, you have to have fashion shows for every kind of talent show. So this is a Kyrgyz designer that had taken fragments of this same kind of dowry fabric that you see we have, and we sell in our shop, pieces of it all around fragments. And instead of turning it into table runners and pillowcases, they turned it into top fashion kinds of stuff. And so this was a fashion show, and we'll go through those pretty quick. Yeah. Okay.
Do they play music as they do it?
They did, yeah, and things like that. Now we're going to talk for a second about whatever we came for, which is Kokboru.
Yeah.
Okay, Kokboru is this traditional game that was designed supposedly to train people for battle on horseback. And it has developed over centuries, I guess, into being a very rough sport played on horseback in which you try to move, your team tries to move the carcass of a goat or a sheep down the field into a goal, whereas the other team is trying to stop you. And anything goes. You use your horses to block other horses. You try to pull the carcass away from the guy that's running with the carcass. And traditionally, and we have seen this game over the years when we've been in Central Asia, and these next three slides show what it normally looks like, which is usually played after harvest. And you have a couple of different villages or towns that get together, and they are these humongous teams of sometimes 20, 30, 40 horsemen. And, you know, if you can remember that crazy Sylvester Stallone movie, Rambo, First Blood, when he goes to save Western civilization in Afghanistan, and there's a great scene of him playing Kokboru, or Bushkashi as they call it, on his muscles glistening, pulling this dead carcass down the field, pushing people out of the way. Well, obviously that was photoshopped because he doesn't do that. But the real game actually is really rough and rugged. And one of the best representations of it ever on film was a very little known Omar Sharif film starring Omar Sharif and Jack Palance, if anybody can remember that, called The Horseman, which you can still get on Netflix. And it is a wonderful thing because it's the story of the national Bushkashi matches in Afghanistan during the 70s and the roughneckedness of it all. And so this was actually in Kyrgyzstan back when we were there in the 90s. And why don't we go through a couple more of them? You can sort of see these are the teams playing the game, and anybody can sort of join in, and there's cars parked up there and a lot of spectators, you know, watching this thing going on. And it is totally incomprehensible. You have no idea what's going on. You can hardly see where the dead sheep or goat is, but it's obviously in the middle of that scrum. there, and they're pushing and pulling, and they almost all are wearing these padded taxi driver helmets. I have one up there on a stand by the hats, because they're padded. And you really have a very rough time. You're falling off your horse, or people are colliding with you, or you're getting crushed by another horse as you're trying to pull up the carcass. And then you've got your riding crops, and you're beating the horses and your other players, and it's a really wild and woolly. Yeah. And it just goes on and on. And I mean, I certainly couldn't figure out what was going on with that. Well, what they've done for the sport now is they've, as one of our guys that we met there said, is, and I'm not sure what the Russian word was, but it was translated as they've sissified it. They've made it into a sissy sport. Because now, what's going on?
Nobody gets killed.
Well, no, now it is in a hippodrome with 5,000 seats. It's like bigger than Churchill Downs. The field that it's played on is soft dirt, very carefully stirred up so you don't hurt yourself when you fall off your horse, which happens a lot. And the two goals where you dump this carcass are about a quarter of a mile apart. And there's thousands of people in this stadium. They have instant replay, huge screens. They have cameras on cables between cranes that can follow the action from up above. They have referees with yellow cards and red cards, so if you make a foul, they can go leave the game. But you can actually see what's going on, which is an improvement from before. And so this is us sitting in the stands waiting for one of the games to begin. And there's just thousands of people all the way down waiting to see Kok Boru, as it's called in Turkish. Okay? And then I happened to look down from where we were sitting, and there was a whole bunch of guys with American flags on their bowling shirts, their shirts there. So I went down and talked to them, and they are part of a military assistance group that is helping the Kyrgyz military, training them or doing something like that. And I'll come back to how meaningful that was to me later on, towards the end. Okay. And so here's a photograph of the referee. This is the goal. And this is America versus Kazakhstan. And so the gray, and these hats are actually helmets, so they look like traditional hats, but they're really hats over helmets, which protect your head a little bit. And then at night, this backdrop is all lit with lights for the mountains and yurts and things like that. Okay, let's move on.
Does everybody have a different goat? I mean, use the same goat?
You use the same goat for the whole game, yeah. And then, but you eat it at the end. Oh, it's just tenderized. I mean, you know, it's basically, they cut off it's a whole goat. It weighs about 35 kilos. It's about 100 pounds
Yeah, and
of
the head's
dead goat.
gone.
Head's gone, and the hooves are gone. So basically, it's just a big, heavy hunk of flesh that you reach down, you pick up, and you run down. And, you know, those of us that are used to having our meat in cellophane, you know. And what's interesting is the way they butcher the goat, because they butcher it the same way that, and I think this comes back to basically the time when they were Buddhists or something, but it is very moving to see. And